A very good day to all of you. To continue with the poem, The Rime of Ancient Mariner, today in this video we will take the second part of the poem. In the previous video, we have discussed about the first part of the poem. So, the poem Rime of Ancient Mariner is about how the mariner's ship sailed past the equator and was driven by storms to the cold regions towards the South Pole, and how mariner cruelly killed a seabird named albatross, and how he was followed by many strange problems and distresses, and how he could come back to his own country. So the poem, as in the previous video we have discussed in brief about the content, about the theme of the poem. So the content of Coleridge poetry is extraordinary and supernatural events, and the aim of the poet is to give them a semblance of truth. As well as he uses archaic language that is very rich in sound devices. The vocabulary that the poet uses is very simple and it's accessible to everybody. So the poet uses imagination, and with the creative power of imagination he makes his poem very beautiful and having a semblance of truth. If we discuss the theme of the poem, the major theme of the poetry that we have taken, they are crime and punishment, penance and forgiveness, divine intervention, creating a harmony between humanity and nature. So the poem is about the crime. And what was the crime? The crime of killing a innocent bird. And penance and forgiveness, how mariner repents, how he regrets that why he had killed a very innocent bird who was the messenger of God, and how the poet feels a kind of sorrow, or we can say a penance or a regret in his heart, and there is a divine intervention. So the poet gives a kind of gives a message, and he just want to create a harmony between humanity and nature, that we should be very we can say very sympathetic and kind towards all birds and animals, and towards humanity as well as nature. So the summary, if we take the summary, we will talk about the summary of the poem in brief. The poem was published in 1798 and it take place around the same time as published. The poem takes place in a wedding hall and on a ship. The mariner, the narrator, tells a wedding guest a story about his voyage across the ocean. He does this periodically or whenever there is a wedding. So at first the story seems cheerful and the guest is intrigued. But soon the story takes a turn of events. So the mariner talks about how his crew was stuck at sea during a storm. So, however, an albatross, a seabird known for good luck, was following them. The crew thought it was good luck, but the mariner disagreed and killed the bird. The crew was angry until they realized the bird's death caused the fog to go away. So, what they didn't realize was worse events were coming. So these sailors, they got stranded without any food or water. After some time they were so thirsty that they could not talk. Being as furious as they come, they hung the corpse of albatross around the mariner's neck. So later he swallowed his own blood to cure his thirst and yelled to his crew that he had seen a sail. They immediately went to it, thinking they were saved. So the issue is that it was actually evil spirits. They killed everyone except the mariner. He somehow survived for 7 days and nights until he was rescued. So the story ends by the wedding guest no longer attending the wedding and becoming a sadder yet wiser man. So the second part, I have already sent you the whole text, the full text of the poem, and you will read. You will go through the text positively and try to understand that. So the second part of the poem, in the second part of the poem, the poet talks that the weather has completely changed. The sun has appeared, although there is still a thick layer of mist in the air. So it was foggy and misty, and only with no trace of sun in the sky. So the poet has used personification, and the sun is treated as a human being. So Mariner says that the sun rose out of the sea, and on the right side of the ship it was hidden all we can say he says that it was hidden in mist all day. In the evening it sank into the sea on their left. So one can see the favorable south wind still blew, pushing the ship northward, but the sweet bird that used to come to them every day, either for food or for play with them, was no more to follow them. In the second line of this stanza, the bird has been called sweet because it was an innocent bird of good omen. So, how he talks about albatross. So, sweet also conveys the guilty feeling of mariner, guilty feeling the mariner finds himself in the killing the bird. He regrets the killing. The fellow sailors call the bird to feed it and they to play with it. So many of them were calling it by force of habit, though they knew that it had been killed. So the hellish thing that is done by the mariner in this part is that he had wantonly killed the albatross, an innocent bird of good omen. So whose arrival had coincided with the blowing of the wind. Due to the commission of this hellish thing, their ship got stuck in the middle of hot and sultry silent sea, with no water to drink and no ray of hope to brighten them up. So they went through a lot of physical and mental agony. So, but now the bright sun rose neither dim or red, but luminous. It was very luminous and glorious like the head of God. The sailor declared that the mariner had done the right thing by killing the bird, that he had brought fog and mist. So you can see here the sun now rose upon the right, out of the sea came he still hid in the mist. So the sun has been described as glorious because it shines brilliantly, and its brightness stands in contrast to the dullness of recently spent days. And this thing, it shows the two contrary views of the sailors who earlier had condemned the killing of the bird as sinful, but now they approve of it and hold the bird responsible for the fog and the mist. So here what he wants to suggest, that a favorable gentle wind blew. If you see here, and some in dreams assured were of the spirit that plagued us so, 9 fathom deep he had followed us from the land of mist and snow. So a spirit had followed them, one of the invisible inhabitant of this planet, neither departed souls nor angels, concerning whom the learned Jew, Josephs and Platonic, he is talking about all these things. So here the poet has used kind of all the images to invoke the rasp of a parched throats. So He says that, "Oh, valid day, what evil looks had I from old and young, instead of the cross, the albatross about my neck was hung." So the shipmates, in their sore distress, they would fain throw the whole guilt on the ancient mariner, in sign whereof they hang the dead sea bird around his neck. So, if we talk about the literary figure, we can see the exclamation that make the tone into a lament. There is the internal rhyme that draws striking parallel between Christ and albatross. The mariner's sins echoes Christ killers. So, the most important purpose of this section, if we go, is to introduce the punishment of the mariner. The plot progresses quickly in this section and passing from good fortune into dreary arrest, which rapidly evolves into violent operation. So, the repeated references to hell and godlessness represents passing a point of no return into a realm of endless suffering. So we can see a theme of crime and punishment is very present in this portion of the poem. So the idea that is presented is support a crime are equally culpable as actual perpetrator is laid out in no uncertain terms by the poet. So we can see here that the sailors, they justify the crime, and thus they become the part of that crime, or we can say they become culprit themselves and accomplices in the crime. So however, the mariner bears the blame for everyone in a strange and ironical parallel to Christ. And unlike Christ, however, the mariner's acceptance of this blame was not voluntary, which is a key difference. So, another sense, the albatross is Christ-like figure, and the mariner with his action has directly assaulted one of God's most beautiful and beloved creature, thus justifying all misfortunes that falls on the crew and himself. So, ironically, the judgment that falls upon them is completely merciless and out of accordance with the idea of a benevolent, forgiving God. So, the section expands on these themes of sin, punishment, and spiritual parallels which appear throughout the poem. It also offers a previously unknown perspective on the natural and supernatural dynamics of the ill-fated voyage. So this is the whole poem. In this you can find the second part of the poem that we have undertaken today. You will see in this part, you will see the sun rising and the sun setting. These are beautiful imagery. There is the imagery of birds hanging, breeze blowing, wind whirling, and we can see the sun, the wind, the ship, the bird, moon, water. So the bird represents life and death. So these are the beautiful imagery that creates a beautiful scene. So then we have rhyme and alliteration. So here, if you see the rhyme scheme, the sun now rose upon the right, out of the sea came he, still hid in mist, and on the left went down into the sea. So if you see the rhyme scheme of A, B, C, B, D, and E, F, E, you will find the sun now rose upon the night. So here there are figure of speeches. So if we see that what we have learned from the part 2, so the part 2, the rhyme of the ancient mariner, he teaches us about trusting others and not to be harsh to others, even if they seem to be faulting in their work. So this part, second part that we have dealt today, it unfolds the story and the true meaning of the albatross as well as the storm. So in this part, the poet talks about his experience, the mariner talks about his experiences at sea. So I hope you have got the poem, got this part, and in the next video we will take the remaining part. Thank you.